In some breaking news, Everton have had points reinstated, refunded, returned to sender. Welcome to your Forest news. Good morning, good evening, or good night. Hope you guys are doing well, and welcome to your latest Nottingham Forest news. In today's video, we'll tell you everything you need to know about Everton getting points back. What does this mean for Nottingham Forest? And is this a boost or a hindrance? We'll get into all of that. If you're enjoying the content, please don't forget to hit that like button down below. Make sure you're subscribed. That too is down below. And in the pinned comments, go and get your tickets for this beautifully signed Home Forest kit, framed as well, signed by the squad from Football Prizes. You got till Wednesday, but these tickets are going like hotcakes. And if you hit randomly ticket number 100, you will end up with that signed home kit from last season as well. Insta prize. Thank you to Football Prizes for sponsoring this video. Okay, let's jump into this. Okay, so Everton have been reinstated 4 points from the 10 that they originally got hit with. So they're down to basically a net loss of 6. And Everton have come out with a statement about this. Let me just quickly read the statement out to you. Everton can confirm an appeal board has concluded that the points deduction imposed by an independent Premier League commission in November has reduced from 10 points to 6 points with immediate effect. While the club is still digesting the appeal board's decision, we are satisfied our appeal has resulted in a reduction of the point sanction. We understand the appeals board's the 10-point deduction originally imposed to be inappropriate when assessing against the available benchmark of which the club made and the commission were aware, including the position under the relevant EFL regulations, and that a 9-point deduction is imposed under the Premier League's own rules in the event of insolvency. The club is also particularly pleased with the appeal's decision to overturn the original commission's finding that the club failed to act in the utmost good faith. That decision, along with reducing the points deduction, was an incredibly important point of principle for the club on appeal. The club therefore feels vindicated in pursuing its appeal. Notwithstanding the appeal board's decision and the positive outcome, the club remains fully committed to cooperating with the Premier League in respect of the ongoing proceedings brought by the accounting period ending in June 2023. The club is still considering the wider implications of the decision and will make no further comment at this time other than to place on record its thanks to the Fans Advisory Board and other fan groups throughout this process, and to all the Evertonians for their ongoing support and patience. So a lot to take in there. Couple of key points. One, that they clearly used the whole Portsmouth thing when they went into insolvency and got 9 points reduced. Basically, what Everton must have said in their appeal is that 10 points is a way bigger penalty than what you would get for going insolvent as a football club. And that's clearly one of the points they used to bring their points reduction down. So, i.e., the maximum punishment for insolvency should have been 9 points based on previous cases. Therefore, Everton didn't go to the stage of insolvency. Therefore, their punishment should be lower than the likes of Portsmouth that they had in the past. So that's one important point. The other important point, it sounds like they were charged, or in an allegation was put to them about acting in the utmost good faith. And that in itself, we have seen it with Forest, and we'll talk about Forest in a minute, where Forest are constantly saying we've acted in good faith, we're working with the Premier League, etc. So that's an interesting point, and we'll come on to that when we talk about how this impacts Forest. Now, the other thing to take into account is this actually a good thing for Everton? Because yes, they've had the 4 points reduced, but they too have a fresh PSR charge against them, as do Forest, where if this had been a financial penalty where the independent body had turned around and said, you know what, no points should have been deducted, this should have just been a financial penalty or a transfer embargo, then Everton and Forest technically would have had that benchmark for the next set of charges, where they can say, well, last time it got overturned and we got a points penalty, we got a fine rather than a points penalty, therefore you can't give us any points penalties either. So it should be a mixed bag of emotions. If you're an Evertonian watching this, how do you feel about this one? Is this a victory for Everton or not? But this is really, really important for Nottingham Forest. So let's move on and talk about how does this impact Forest? Does it help us or does it hinder us? Now, in my opinion, and I've said this over the last couple of months, I wanted Everton to have all 10 points reinstated. When we did our interview with Kieran Maguire, he also said the same thing, that if Everton could have a points reduction, then it would set a precedent in terms of what could happen to Forest and Everton again going forward. If you haven't seen that interview, I'll leave it on the end screen for you guys to check out. Really insightful about how the finances work in football and in particular in the Premier League. Now, Forest charges and Everton's are not exactly the same. Everton have got their stuff with the stadium. Forest is all around Brennan Johnson. But the important thing now is that we know there is a backstop, that Forest cannot or should not receive more than a maximum of a 6-point penalty points deduction as a penalty. Now, if that was to play out, we can now start as Forest fans to fairly confidently play the worst case scenario situation when it comes to Forest. And we can kind of ride that with Everton as well. So, for example, if Forest now get hit with a 6-point penalty, and let's assume Everton do as well, the table would read quite differently. Luton would be outside the relegation zone. Obviously, Burnley and Sheffield will be bottom. Forest will go down to, I think it's 18 points. Everton would go down to 19 points. Forest would be 18th, Everton would be 19th, and Luton would be 20th. So in essence, Forest would be, what, a point behind Everton. They've got a better goal difference, so 2 points technically, if you take goal difference into account, from getting out the relegation zone. And that would work both ways, because if we got to 20 points, we've got a better goal difference than Luton just at the moment. Goal difference is going to be extremely important in the run-in to the end of this season. So if Forest now, we work on the worst case scenario that we get hit with 6 points, it is still doable that Forest survive. And it's going to make that Luton game astronomically huge, and the Everton game as well on the 20th of April. Now, the other thing to consider is that if Forest get hit with a 6-point penalty from the Premier League, Forest will no doubt appeal that. And if Forest can get 1, 2, maybe even 3 points back from that, then the scenario looks very, very good indeed in a worst case scenario, if you see what I'm saying. But what I'm telling you guys here is, and this is just my opinion, I'm no financial expert, it's just kind of reading the room, talking to other financial experts, is that if Forest can now, should I say, with certain amount of certainty, say that 6 points should be that backstop. And I think Forest now need to work on the assumption that we are on 18 points, that we are now unofficially in the relegation zone, if you see what I mean. And that gives us clear sight of what we need to do to stay up. And that's important because it removes some of that uncertainty. Like, okay, what if we were to get 10? Where do we end up with? What if we only got 6? Where do we end up with? My mindset now, and I think the club's mindset now, should be that Forest are in the relegation zone, but very close to coming out of it. We got the game against Liverpool at the weekend. Maybe we can get a point out of it. But then after we play Brighton, then we've got that Luton game. I don't care what Forest Ant says. That now becomes the biggest must win of all must wins right now for Nottingham Forest. This game is huge. So will the Burnley game towards the end of the season. And so will be the Sheffield game as well. Forest have now got to try and stay ahead of Everton and of Luton. The rest of the teams will probably end up with a gap with the point reductions that will come up in the second round. Now, the other thing to mention is that now this Everton appeal has been complete. They've had their points reinstated on the board. They're back up to 15th. Now the Premier League can start to enact on the next set of charges for Everton and for Forest. So I'm expecting very shortly we will hear the date on the appeal. If the club haven't already had it, which I think they have, it will be publicly announced shortly. And then we will know the timeline on when Forest will officially find out when the appeal comes in or not. But this is a huge day for Forest and for Everton. It gives us a little bit of clarity of where we are going to be or what we can expect. But how do you guys feel about it? Do some of you feel that maybe Everton should, well, not that they shouldn't, but would you have felt better if Everton had 0 points reinstated? Or do you want Everton, like me, to have had all their points reinstated? Because the precedent here is the most important thing about this whole scenario. You have to go back. It's a legal case. This is how they always do things. You have to have an argument based on it. And I will say it again. Nick DiMarco is now the most important signing for Forest in the last 5 years. Comfortably. He is now got the weight and the hopes and the dreams of all us Forest fans. Let me know how you feel about all of that. Get your thoughts in the comments down below. I can't wait to have a look at those. Don't forget, if you want to, make sure to go check out the full video we did with Kieran Maguire last week about the whole financial thing. And if you haven't already, hit that like button. Subscribe to Forest Fan TV if you are new. And get your tickets in, as I mentioned at the start of the video, for the signed framed Forest home kit signed by the squad. And if you get ticket 100, you lucky gits, let me know. Thank you for watching. We'll see you on the next video. Come on, you Reds.